Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Pole Position Podcast. I'm Jack Price, and with me today is my guest, Jamie Davies. Jamie, it's here. Race week is here. Race week is here. The Australian Grand Prix is here. How excited are we? First race of the season. We've been waiting since the end of November, since the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. It could be a very boring race,
but
I can't wait. It's funny because sometimes I forget what it's like watching an F1 race. So then when you watch it again, you think, oh, the goosebumps are back. I haven't seen you since November. Hello, goosebumps. I'm looking forward to it. But it's one of those where it's probably going to be a typical sunny day in Melbourne, so no rain.
Mm-hmm. But so I think most of the time we enjoy qualifying. And then races.
Races are a bit, yeah. Qualifying's always a bit. It's either between Vettel or Hamilton, or maybe Raikkonen now and again. I don't know why I'm even saying that, but it's the fact that this time we have to get up at 5 a.m. or is it like
10 past 5 UK start time?
That's even earlier than last year. Isn't it? I don't remember being that early. Oh, that's brutal.
Are you going to be able to make it?
I hope so. I've got work that day, so it's like, I'm not going to be able to watch it during the day. So it's like,
you've got to make it.
I've got to make it.
Australian Grand Prix, Albert Park, Melbourne, 58 laps of the track, first held in 1928, and the constructors who have it the most in wins is Ferrari on 12 and McLaren on 12.
Oh, really?
Don't think McLaren are going to make it this year, but are Ferrari?
Make it 13?
Are Ferrari going to make it 13? Are they going to get ahead? Do we think? Because the last two winners have been Sebastian Vettel in 2017 and 2018, Lewis Hamilton in 2015, and Nico Rosberg was in 2016. But the last 2 years have been Ferrari, and specifically Sebastian Vettel. Do we think Ferrari this year as well?
Last 2 years would tell you that, but I'm not sure. From all we can gather is the evidence of testing where Mercedes, even Valtteri Bottas, which I don't know why they say it, I don't know why they come out with it. Maybe they get told by Toto Wolff. Saying the press conference, they might start to think we're not good anymore. Where Bottas said we're behind Ferrari. Now, if they haven't made much changes since testing, which was a week ago, they'd have only had a fortnight to sort it. And let's be honest, they've got to travel and all that as well. Logistical are travelling now as we speak, probably. But I would imagine Ferrari are the favourites to win just because of what we saw in testing and because of their last two races there in Melbourne. But I'm not sure, really. That's what I love about the Australian Grand Prix. You learn a bit more about the cars. Last year we didn't expect Haas to do so well, and then they really screwed it up on race day. And funny enough, watching the documentary the other day reminded me of how heartbreaking it was for a very young team. So we just don't know. Renault could surprise us. Red Bull might surprise us. We hope that these two teams can be the real fighters against Ferrari and Mercedes, just because it's more drivers in competition. The first race is always exciting as well because everyone's on level points. One race win means nothing, and then it's still open no matter what the result is. But let's just hope there's no dominant racing this weekend, otherwise I'm a bit concerned.
Yeah, is that a real worry then that you think?
I think so, because F1's in a period where I don't know what to think, because everyone's going on about how boring the races are, and we'll talk about one of the rules that they've just added in that might happen over the fact that the races are boring. And they're still having these aims and objectives to try and make it more exciting. And I don't know what you could do, but we need this racing. We need this rivalry again this season, otherwise it's going to really be tough.
Do you think if they had a rivalry in place, say you just named the few teams. You've got Bottas and Hamilton. You've got Leclerc now in Ferrari and Vettel. If you bring in Daniel Ricciardo and possibly Nico Hülkenberg and Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly in this sort of fight, does that just blow everything about the boringness out of?
Oh yeah,
people just completely forget about that.
I think since I've been watching F1, 2010 would be a good example because you had 4 drivers going for it on the last day of the season. It was Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Mark Webber, and Sebastian Vettel. Okay, Hamilton was kind of out of it, but he could still mathematically do it. Alonso I think he was a favourite, and then Mark Webber kind of screwed it up in South Korea, which will be something he'll never want to watch again. And Vettel surprised everyone that day, and he won the race comfortably, and he found out afterwards, oh wait, I've done it, I've won the World Championship. So I think we'd want that where I don't mind 2 drivers on the final day, but to have so many drivers go for it, because I mean, I've been watching MotoGP yesterday and the Formula E, where, okay, MotoGP's just started, but for example, Dovizioso just won the race and F1 has tipped him to beat Marc Marquez and he won the first race. So it's like, hello.
Yeah.
You know, Marc Marquez is like the Hamilton of MotoGP, where he's won the last few world championships quite easily. And maybe, okay, he wouldn't say that, but the fans would look at it that way. Formula E had Sam Bird winning the race yesterday, which he would have been the first driver to have won multiple races this season. This is the 5th race. Everyone else has been different winners. But he didn't win because the FIA kicked in and did a boring penalty against him and said, no, that's not fair. So, yeah. All I'm saying is that there's a lot of race series out there at the moment where if F1 doesn't pick it up soon, then other people might think, well, I don't know if I want to watch a whole race when I can watch a 7-minute clip on YouTube, which F1 themselves do.
I was going to say, because F1 actually do that, so they could actually lose viewers in the fact that if the racings are still as boring, they just go, I'll watch them 7 minutes of YouTube clips.
But I think it's good, though, that F1 has jumped onto the modern day era of media. They've got to, when you've got that amount of followers. I mean, they've got over 1 million subscribers already on YouTube, and the amount of views they get just for a normal, simple video, it's like you've got to use the advantage. If we could do that, we would. It's like, it's just something you've got to take advantage of. So I just look at it and think, I watched the MotoGP race where there was 5 riders going for the race win on the last lap.
Yeah. And
you don't see that in F1.
Like I say, we had that with the Formula E a couple of weeks ago in Mexico, didn't they?
Yeah.
Last minute. I mean,
all these F1 rejects trying to go for a race win.
All these that we're talking about completely different sports to F1, but they all have these exciting things going on. I know the season hasn't started in F1, but we are hoping that something like that takes place. And again, I say the same as you. I think F1 have done a good job with Liberty Media in bringing in this sort of social media style, implementing as many things as they can. I mean, they have a they have a rival podcast, but I think they're all they're doing a good step forward, and I know Ross Brawn has that sort of F1 style as much as the other people like Chase Carey are all business people, and if they all work together, then hopefully we can sort of find a solution and stop these boring races. But if 6 drivers go for the championship, that completely changes the subject, doesn't it?
You straight away think Bottas has got to do it this season because Ocon's knocking on the door. He's got to be in there. I mean, if he doesn't get a grip at the start, then Mercedes could just think, secondary, mate, you're secondary, I'm afraid. With Ferrari, you got Vettel and Leclerc, where Leclerc, he'll need some more experience up front because he's not had that yet. It kind of reminds me of like Perez when he was up front with Sauber in the Malaysia race, where Alonso just went past him with no fight, and it's just like he's still learning, he doesn't know what he's doing. So I think with that, it's very exciting. I mean, we just don't know about Renault yet. I think that's the question.
Please, Renault.
Yes, I'd love Renault to come back, but it's like that's the big question this weekend for me. They're the team I want to look out for.
Yeah, I know me and you are big fans of McLaren, but if I see Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hulkenberg on the podium together this year, that's a screenshot and a wallpaper picture.
Hopefully not just in Abu Dhabi.
No, do it a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, a little bit earlier than that.
But I've put here, is this? I know it's the first race of the season, but does the Australian Grand Prix get a hype just because it's the first race of the season and not because it's a decent track?
I think you're right. I don't rate the track. I don't rate it. It's just a bit.
Melbourne looks amazing, though.
It's a great set. Yeah. I mean, Australia's done its purpose for F1. It's been around for years.
1928 was the first
was it?
Grand Prix it was held.
That must have been before F1 was a thing then. So I mean, it's a beautiful venue. It's not bad to go on holiday, and it's not bad for Daniel Ricciardo to say hello to his fans before he goes around the world. In all fairness, it's quite a nice. I mean, I'm only saying this. I'm not a driver. I played the game. I actually quite like the circuit in terms of driving on. It's actually quite a nice. Few tough corners, especially the last turn. The second last turn where. You got to obviously cut in, then go opposite way, and then turn right, and then go on to the finish line. Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, after that, it's just a bit. I can't really remember a classic Australia race for a while now. I couldn't name you 5 good races from it. But yeah, again, you forget them so easily because of how many races are after it.
Yeah.
So I think if Australia was a normal track, like in the midway point of the season, then it's like. Yeah, don't know. It's just always been known as the start. I remember 10 years ago, Bahrain was the first race of the season. But that all changed.
But I think Australia is a great place to sort of start because the Aussie fans love the F1 as well.
They love it.
The fans are amazing.
Reminds me of Jenson Button winning. Actually, no. My favourite Australia race straight away is Braun winning it on the first race.
And then throwback pictures of Jenson Button tweeting going 10 years ago since the Braun GP car. And you got him and Barrichello. It's just like them days.
What did he call it? He called it "What a Babe" or something like that, didn't he?
What a car that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a point here I put here that the last year in the Australian Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso finished 5th, and the only reason why I now remember that is because obviously watching the documentary on Netflix, which if you haven't check that out, I'm not plugging it because I'm not getting any money for it, but I'm just saying
Drive to Survive.
Yeah.
Why would you call it that though? Would you call it that? Drive to Survive? No, I don't know. They make it sound like F1's okay. It's still dangerous, but there's hardly anyone that dies in it now. Okay, calm down.
I don't know. We'll have to. I'll send them an email. But yeah,
they might not respond.
No, I don't think they will. Fernando Alonso obviously finishing 5th. I mean, quickly, we both obviously have a soft spot for McLaren. Do we think there's going to be any hope of? It's top 10, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that would be their aim. I mean. I keep forgetting. No, that's the thing. We talk about all these drivers. Everyone's forgetting about Lando Norris, aren't they? It's his first race in F1, and it will be for George Russell as well. So great,
George
great.
Russell, yeah, in Williams. Sorry, George.
Well, that's if the car turns up. I hear DHL haven't got their car yet, but I think it'll be interesting. I'd like to see how Lando Norris does. Carlos Sainz, I think, will be the favourite to finish above him just because he's got the experience and he knows the circuit very well. But this is when we'll learn a bit more about McLaren. Who could their priority be? You'd think Lando Norris, just because he is a product from the McLaren racing days, especially when they had Hamilton with a fellow Spaniard back in 2007, and then that all went. That
went well.
Let's just say one guy left and the other one stayed.
Yeah. So let's go on to the news situation. I mean, another story about Ferrari, of course, because start of the season, Ferrari seems to get as much publicity as the most. And there's been talk of, obviously, Sebastian Vettel being the one that Ferrari are going to push. But new boss, Matteo Binotto, says that Charles Leclerc will be free to fight. I mean, is that music to your ears, Jamie?
It is. It's like the theme tune from F1 2010, but you've got the feeling. So it's just like he's got the feeling that he might be able to do it.
Yeah,
I'm glad that's the case, but it was like Red Bull last season before Azerbaijan, where they were open to race, and then the crash happened, and then I won't repeat the words that Christian Horner said in that documentary, but it's so funny. He basically says the F word is like, that's 40 points. Beep beep and all that. He was very angry, but it was after that when I think Verstappen was number one, and Ricciardo had still not sorted out his future for the sport, and I think he looked at Verstappen and think that they want you, mate, like they want you to be the world champion, not me. But I think with Ferrari, it is good that they're both letting them race. I think every team should be like that at the start of the season, because you just got to see how they do. What's the point in being a race if you're number 2? Like Mark Webber proved that in 2010 with that race win against Vettel, and then he said, not bad for number 2 driver. Yeah. And it's just like, this is it. It's racing.
So awkward, that, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. People say, they get paid nicely, they get to travel and all that. It's like, yeah, but it's like, this is what they worked their arse off for, basically. They want to they want to make a name for themselves. And this is why I admire Valtteri Bottas, because he's been very calm about it, but I really want him to do well, because I think he's a fantastic bloke. I've not met him or anything, but he just seems like a really nice guy. He just wants to do a good job in F1. And I think with Ferrari, it's interesting they're letting them both drive, but if them two collide at all, then Vettel's got a new Mark Webber in his team.
Yeah, not again.
Not again.
But it says Binotto said that if there will be particular situations in the season where our priority will be Sebastian Vettel, but he has said that obviously the two will be free to fight during the season. We will not ask Charles Leclerc to be slow or push Sebastian Vettel to be faster. We want them both to give the maximum that they can do. So I mean, that is what I want to hear. I don't want anything about, please, Charles, let him pass. If I hear another thing like Bottas got told last year in Russia from Lewis Hamilton, it's just
I just hope there's not a moment where it's like, whoop, press the button.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Press.
Oh dear, Leclerc's engine's just gone off.
Who turned the key?
Who turned the key? Riva Bene's here.
Yeah, he's just hiding in the background. Well, talking about somebody who has left, like Riva Bene, Paddy Lowe has decided to take a leave of absence. He hasn't left the team, but he's decided to take a little break for personal reasons.
Or more jumping out of a building that's about to explode.
I mean, what do we say about Williams? I mean, to say they haven't had the best start to the year and to the season, with the season's not even starting, is a bit of an understatement. Obviously, we already know that they didn't bring the car to the first couple of days of testing. You know, they did a few laps, but it was nowhere near as much data as the other teams during the 2 weeks. And now their chief technical officer has left. I mean, Claire Williams said it was embarrassing for the test. I mean, to now lose the top guy, they lost Rob Smedley at the end of last year as well.
Rob Smedley's a legend. Like everyone loves Rob Smedley.
Well, I mean, what's going on?
I don't know. I just feel like it's a ship that's sinking, where you either jump off it now or you're going to drown. And I think that's what people like Paddy Lowe and Rob Smedley have done, where they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, Claire Williams, I said to you before we started recording, if she wasn't a family member of Frank Williams, would she have been sacked by now? Because I just don't see it. I don't understand. She wouldn't explain. Like I've probably said this in the podcast, where she didn't explain what the problem was, and it's just like, well, you're not really answering the questions then, are you? Kubica and Russell haven't moaned about it, like they haven't opened up about it. They've just said that they're patient with it, but at some point they've got to have a barrier where if it goes over that, then, you know, how patient can they be?
Is the reason because they've been so patient the fact that they're too... I don't want to call Robert Kubica inexperienced, but you look at it now, he's had 8 years outside of F1. George Russell is in his first season. If they complain, they're going to go, well, you're new. You know,
Yeah.
So do you think they're just sort of sitting back and going, we'll just see what happens?
I think you're right. It's kind of like there's nothing else on offer, and it's more, you know, just be paid. Yeah, you've just said it spot on, where there is nothing else. It's just like, look, you've got yourself here. We've offered you something. Just, you know, you're one of the best you're one of the best drivers in the world. Just be patient, be happy that you're in that position.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. If Kubica was a continuous driver over the last few years in F1, he wouldn't be at Williams anyway. I don't think.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But yeah, I just think Williams. I hope they prove us wrong. I just hope that car that looks like toothpaste will actually do something.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing, yeah. It's an Acro Fresh car. I'm sure they're sponsoring them without putting the logo on it, but we'll see. I'm not convinced, because if you don't turn up at testing and you're sacking, well, you're not sacking people, but you've got your main leaders leaving the role just before the season starts, that's a problem.
Because you've got a void to fill now, haven't you? You've got something. You need to fill that place as well as gearing up for the season.
I mean, they were looking for an event plan on their website the other day, and I'm just like, well, you know, I mean, I could do that, but I could also, you know, I might know a few things about.
You have just slated their boss, but do you want me to erase that?
Yeah,
you can still apply
Claire.
You can still apply for the job.
No, I love you really, Claire.
Well, I'm just hoping that Williams do have... They do have some sort of spark. I mean, like you said, there doesn't seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel. We were hoping that last season would be the blip, as it were. Yeah. But I mean, the way it is, it's just not working out. Is it?
Look at the teams around them, though. Like Sauber, if they carry on, they've got Kimi Räikkönen in their team, so that car could be.
They've leapfrogged Williams, really, haven't they?
Oh
completely.
yeah.
You look at it now.
Sauber were a joke 2 years ago in that shed of a car that Marcus Ericsson was driving, that yellow.
Nasser. Was it Felipe Nasser as well?
I think it might have been, yeah. And then there was Pascal Wehrlein. It was just like, it was just terrible. The only good thing Pascal Wehrlein was useful for was picking up Vettel when his car crashed with Stroll at the end of a race. But I just look at the teams around where Sauber have got Kimi Räikkönen, and no matter what the car is, Räikkönen will certainly push that up a notch, just like Alonso did with McLaren. Yeah. As well, Toro Rosso look good. They always look good. Toro Rosso always have a good season.
Racing Point, obviously your big man, Sergio
Yeah,
Perez.
Racing Point, they'll reach the top 4 this season. I make it sound like they're going for Champions League.
We have said Sauber, but do you actually mean a different name?
Sauber. We don't get paid to say a...
Alfa Romeo, we're not saying Alfa
Yeah.
Romeo.
I can't get... It's so hard to say it. I'm so used to Sauber. Damn you, Pete.
Well, I said at some point, halfway through the season, we will say Alfa Romeo. It's got to happen.
At some point.
It's got to happen.
I feel like we need like an hour lecture. We should go for a tour at Alfa Romeo and
for them to just keep saying, if they just keep saying Alfa Romeo over and over again, but I mean, let's just, I don't know. Let's just hope that Williams do have some sort of miracle, as it were, because I think having Kubica and George Russell in that team, it'll be a shame if they're just getting lapped. By the top teams. So, hopefully Williams have a spark somewhere along the line. But we need to talk about this new F1 news about possibility of giving points to a driver who gets the fastest lap in a Grand Prix. Now, I just want to state that at this moment in time of doing this podcast, it hasn't been announced whether it's going to be this season or next season. But it looks like it will be put in place, but we're not sure when. But it says the move is part of a bid to make F1 more appealing and increase the audiences. It does say that the driver with the fastest lap will only be awarded the point if he finishes in the top 10. So you can't just go out put new tyres on with 1 lap to go if you're at the back and get fastest lap.
Imagine if you get a DNF and you got fastest lap. Oh, no.
So you have to be in the top 10, it says here, to get this, but... it will be the first time a point has been awarded for a fastest lap since the 1950 to 1959 seasons. And that was the last time in them few years that you were given a point.
Oh, so it was a thing back then?
It was,
right,
between 1950 and 1959, you were given points for fastest lap. So, it has been in this sport before, but... Do you see this increasing audiences, or do you think it's just a gimmick?
I think put it in. Like, if it's been used before, it's only a point.
It's 1 point, isn't it?
It's only 1 point, but I just think try it out. It's not like it's going to make a big difference, really. In terms of when you look at the last few years of championships, they're won by more than 5 points, aren't they, at the moment? But wow. Yeah, 2014 will tell you that Hamilton won by a mile of over 50 points because of that stupid double point system, which was so wrong. I think use it. I think it's the only rule I've ever kind of thought, that's not a stupid idea compared to when they did that trophy for the most pole positions in 1 year, which we never saw a presentation of. So I don't think it ever existed. It's probably still lost in the post from 5 years ago.
We can borrow it because I did say we were going to give a pole position trophy.
Yes.
So if they still have it somewhere in the back of the shed in the F1 offices, we'll take it.
Send it to 19 St Oswald's Close, Smallpus, Cheshire, SY14 8QT.
Okay, and now just give everyone your address, but that's okay.
Don't send any hate mail.
But yeah, this is hopefully going to appeal to audiences. I mean, when you read it, did you think, okay, this is good? Do you think everybody else has the same?
It didn't really bother me because I just thought you need more than this to make an F1 race exciting.
Yeah.
I keep saying, it's never going to happen, but I'd rather have all the... I feel like with F1, I know there are teams in it, and it's been like that ever since it started, but I just feel like with F1, I'd rather just see the real drivers in which they all have the same car, and then we actually see who is the best driver after 21 races, where you don't have any real advantage unless pit stops become a thing. That's all I see it as. I just feel like that's the only time I'd feel... I'm not saying I'm not excited now for F1. It's just that's just how I feel about F1, where I just wished there was a lot more competitiveness. Because I just feel like there's teams who are lower in F1 where, I don't know, sometimes I always debate this with my dad, where we look at teams like Sauber and all that, and we think they're great for F1, don't get me wrong, but do they ever have it in the back of their mind when they think, what are we here for? I don't know. Yeah. It's like, we're never going to win a race. We're never going to get a podium. Unless we have a moment like 2012 where we somehow picked up a few podiums. I don't know. I'm probably being a bit negative.
That's...
But that's just how I see F1 at the moment. I feel like you need to do a lot more than give a point to someone for fastest lap.
Yeah, I just... my thing sometimes is when I watch the grid, when I watch the drivers lining up to start the race, and you look at the grid marks on a racetrack, you see how many are empty behind them. and you think how many more cars we could have in this if the money for making these cars wasn't so expensive. I mean, you look at touring cars, they've got Porsche, they've got Audi, I think Mercedes have now left DTM, haven't they? To go to Formula E. But again, in that sense, there was loads of car manufacturers. We don't have that in F1.
But again, that's the problem. Formula E's bringing in new things all the time. They've got Audi involved. They've got Jaguar involved.
Yeah.
As you just mentioned last week. Sorry, excuse me. Last week they just mentioned Mercedes and they're bringing London E-Prix back. And I just feel like, that's the way to go at the moment. Like, they're going completely up the hill, Formula E, where they're doing things that involves interaction with the fans as well, like Fan Boost, which, the one that gets the most... Stoffel Van Dorn got the most votes, I think, for the weekend, and didn't really help his fans there, did he? What a waste of votes that was by crashing out. Or I don't even know how he went out. I didn't notice. But that's Formula E at the moment, where they just seem to have this racing series where people are getting behind it, and it's just growing very quickly. It's only been around for 5 years, but it is massive already. And with Formula 1, 20 teams. The minimum of teams you want in F1 is 20, as in 20 cars. If it ever got lower, then I would be very worried about the future of the sport, because at some point, if the teams start to pull out, then you've got no one on the track, have you? That's the first priority of setting up an F1 World Championship, and something needs to happen. It is getting very expensive to run an F1 team, but I feel like anyone could set up an F1 team, but they've got to look at it in the long run and think, can we actually compete?
And is it worth it?
Yeah, if I was a millionaire and had spare money, I'd think, great, I've got an F1 team, but I want to be told that we can compete. Otherwise, there's no point me even starting it. Simple as that.
Yeah. Well, as much as you say, keeping trying to keep the teams and bring in more teams is one of the priorities. Is also keeping the most prestigious tracks on the grid an important thing. We one of the other pieces of news is that Ross Brawn says talks have stalled with Silverstone again, which is, in his words, very frustrating. The contract for the circuit expires after this year's race, and you pointed out before this podcast started that they've actually quoted on Silverstone's sites that this could be the last one. So come along. Is that a worry, really?
Well, I mean, I love the honesty in the advert. It literally just said on a Facebook post, and I keep seeing it as a sponsor. And I'm thinking, they ain't changing that status anytime soon, are they? And I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of the British Grand Prix personally. No. I don't know what it is. I'm not thrilled about Silverstone. A lot of motorsport fans will go look at me and think, well, does he know? But that's just my feeling of it. I went and worked at it last year, and I just felt, you watch other races like Italian Grand Prix, where if they lose that, my God, what would they be doing? Yeah. F1 in Italy just seems like the best experience in the world, and Spa. Mm-hmm. Monaco is just... I think if Monaco wasn't a thing at the start of F1, I don't really think many people would care about it. I don't know. I
think but if you looked at the viewers, most people watch on a Saturday.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
because that's what happens. The race on a Sunday is irrelevant, really, isn't it? Because people just follow each other.
Yeah.
Unless something happens like you said, unless something happens in the pit stops, it's that is the racing order that's happened in qualifying. But I agree with the Italian Grand Prix and the Belgian Grand Prix as well. I love the Hungarian Grand Prix as much as that little bit. That's a little bit the same. I still enjoy that race because that you've got a break in between. So you're like, I need to enjoy this race before the 4 or 5 week break. But Ross Brawn says we're not too far apart and we're hoping to find a solution. But
what is the problem though? Like what's stopping them from doing it?
I think the issue is, and I don't know for sure, but most F1 tracks around the world get government funding.
Yeah.
So the Mexican Grand Prix, I think Sergio Perez obviously helps with that with his name and obviously being an F1 driver, but the government helps put money into the whole weekend, whereas our government...
You've seen our government at the moment.
Yeah, well, they've got issues. I know they have got other issues to worry about, but for as long as I can remember, they haven't put any money into the British Grand Prix, so everything is done by the BRDC.
BRDC, yeah.
And which is run at Silverstone. They are the ones that try and get all the money in, which is why they try and get as many people as possible at the event every year, because that money goes to to keeping the race going. So
I mean, that's disgraceful, isn't it? That there's no real government funding for it, because You know, I don't get it. It's one of the biggest sporting events in the summer in the UK. It's on the same weeks as the Open and Wimbledon, and they are massive. Like I don't even want to start thinking how much money they make.
The joy of a weekend where you think, oh, I've got Wimbledon and I've got the British Grand Prix and I've got it's the whole.
That's the real problem though with the calendar at the moment, where the Open is literally the weekend after Wimbledon's finished, and then the British Grand Prix is on the same weekend as Wimbledon finishing, and it's a bit like, it's like you could really do sprinting it out, especially for me who wants to work at them. I can't slice myself, sadly, otherwise I would die. There's a hospital nearby. If anything happens, I'll try it out. But I just think it's a real shame they can't get it sorted, because you got to think of, I always think of Grand Prix where it's not just about the drivers and creating it for the fans. It's opportunities for people. For the local people, it's a job. Hospitality or entertainment or retail, merchandise.
Even the stewards and the marshals, isn't
it? A lot of the stewards volunteer. They do local races all over the UK for the 12 months. And then the British Grand Prix is probably their biggest gig, because no one can really afford to just go to like Monaco for a weekend or Italy and volunteer. They don't get covered for anything. No. It's just up to them whether or not they show up, because there's always going to be stewards locally at these Grand Prix that would be more than happy to get in for free and do their part on the track. So I think it's a real shame, but we've had threats of Italy and Spa in the past as well. Next year is Vietnam, isn't it? That's happening. I believe
Mexico was talked about being a worry as well, wasn't it?
Really?
Yeah. Which was really hampered because it comes with the Day of the Dead weekend, and it's an amazing atmosphere.
Oh yeah, I bet it's been voted the Grand Prix of the year for the last since they brought it back, which was 2015. So it's just like, what is F1 doing? Like F1. You see, this is when I question Liberty Media, because they can't seem to get anything right with sponsorships either at the moment.
But was this deal ruined by Bernie? Because I don't know when this was signed, the last deal.
Yeah,
Did
maybe
Bernie sign this and then decide to bugger off?
Maybe.
We don't, we're not sure with that. But
I think this is when people got to realise Bernie was very good at what he did. He put F1 on the map. And I don't think there's many people like him out there.
Yeah, well...
Look at what Barry Hearn did for snooker and darts. He's put them on the map. Eddie Hearn with boxing. I know it's his son, but these are real promoters. They know how to do their job.
Yeah. Well, Ross Brawn has stated that he doesn't think it'll be the final British Grand Prix, but whether it'll be at Silverstone or not is another matter. We've talked about there's been talks of a London Grand Prix, but
I'd welcome that though.
Yeah, but what I read funnily about the London Grand Prix is that they said we'd love to do a London Grand Prix because they did that event, didn't they, in Trafalgar Square? Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah,
which was a huge success.
Live.
Yeah, which was a big success. But they said that they don't think they could do in the middle of London because traffic would be chaos. Oof. So it's like, well, where are you going to do it? On the outskirts in Stratford or something? It's not going to be the same, is it?
I remember, I think it was 2012 when McLaren I think it was just British F1 or something like that had come up with it was kind of a teasy video where they got Hamilton and Jenson Button and Martin Brundle involved, where Martin Brundle do like the commentary over the track details and Button and Hamilton would point where the circuit goes, and it was going past Big Ben and all that, and I can't remember if it was just a tease, thinking if London had a Grand Prix this is what it would look like, but I think it was an actual bid of why don't we make this happen. But when I remember watching it and thought, how can you do it? Because it's like, logistical, it's going to be a nightmare. And then Singapore, when they do the Marina Bay, I think they start building it 2 months before it even begins. So that might have to be the same with London, where little things here and there start. I know this is...
They do the marathon, which, that closes off 25 miles of... So, you think, well, London do have events like this where they can do it.
You see, I think London can do it if the money's interesting.
Yeah.
Right? They can't say no. It's putting money into the economy. So I don't think that's a problem. It's just... I think it'll happen one day. Mm-hmm. It could be 20 years from now. It could be in a couple of years. I don't know. But I think it could happen.
Yeah.
F1's a big, big series. You can't say no to it. So I'd like to see it, but I think it needs more backing.
Yeah.
Maybe if Silverstone does get written off, then maybe they would think, well, London might be our next bet, or maybe even Manchester or Birmingham. Places where it's probably a little less busy, but you still got a city that you can race around in and just think of a circuit there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they want to do a Welsh Grand Prix, I'm happy to give it some plans. You know, I'll find.
What was that Welsh track that was built, but then it never.
It never actually got built. That was.
Circuit of Wales is going to be called.
Yeah. Was that in South Wales somewhere?
I think it might have been. I think MotoGP wanted to have it there, but then which would have been great.
It looked like a good track as well when I saw the details. Like, God damn it.
Exactly. It's like Catalonia with Barcelona. You know, a small little nation getting an F1 is amazing. Yeah. So that'd have been good.
Well, let's just see what happens in terms of Liberty Media and can they secure it. Oh, hang on.
Sorry, to carry on. Yeah. You know what's really funny? Is it funny how Silverstone it does MotoGP this year and there's no threat with that?
Yeah.
Just makes you wonder about F1 at the moment, doesn't it? Status-wise.
Who's handling the deals?
Who's handling it? I don't think someone's doing their job.
Well,
give me a job.
That's a note to go out on. Jamie's plug-in is...
They just rejected all my applications, the bastards, but yeah.
Slated Williams, and now you're finished by slated F1. I mean, great. That's a great ending to it. I mean, I'm sorry to hear about that, Jamie.
That's all right.
But we've come to the end. Conclusion, before I wrap up, Jamie, who do you think is going to win the Australian Grand Prix?
Charles Leclerc.
Whoa, that's what I wanted to hear.
I've said it for weeks as a joke, and now I have a feeling...
You feeling it, is it?
I feel it, yeah. So I hope I see Leclerc taken away from Lewis Hamilton. That would be beautiful.
Well, not only that, but Sebastian Vettel, who's going for 3 in a row. I mean, that will be interesting if Charles Leclerc does that. I mean, I'd love to go and agree with you on that. I'd also like to see if Bottas can fight for that as well. I think Bottas winning would be a nice thing as well.
The most beautiful podium this weekend for me would be Leclerc, Bottas and Verstappen. If that somehow happened this weekend, I'd think, oh my God, it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I will go with you on that. Apart from Verstappen, I think I'd love to see Ricciardo in his Renault outfit on third place as an Australian.
In Australia, yeah.
So that is our top. We've actually done a top 3, not just who's going to come out on top. I mean, you're welcome. So that is who we think is going to come out on top in Australia. I mean, stay tuned to the Pole Position podcast, where our next episode we will review the Australian Grand Prix.
Woo!
I cannot wait. Please let it be a good race. Please. Please. We will talk about all the key discussions and our thoughts on it in episode 3 of the podcast. So we will see you all then. Thank you very much for listening.